All right, this is OneLastMidnight. Welcome back to another episode of the Dyson Sphere Program. All right, so today we're going to look at creating the Dyson Swarm. You can see that these EM rail ejectors are shooting solar sails off around my sun, and I've got a Dyson Swarm set up. You can kind of see it off there on the distance around our local star, and it looks really cool. There is also a Dyson Sphere interface that can show you some information about your current Dyson Sphere, how much energy it's generating, how many solar sails are in the network, and how many orbits that you have. You can also set up an additional orbit, and we'll show you how to do that in a minute. So you want to create a Dyson Swarm, and the reason why is because, look, power's a problem. Yeah, you can set up wind turbines all over the place, you can set up solar all over the place, you can even run generators all over the place. But the whole purpose behind the Dyson Sphere program is to set up energy around your local star so that you can use it in the entire planetary system. So there's three main pieces that you need to make, two base building pieces and one item that are absolutely necessary to make the Dyson Swarm. You're going to need to create the EM rail ejector, which launches the solar sails into orbit for the Dyson Swarm. You're also going to need to be able to create solar sails. And then on top of that, you're going to need to create a ray receiver, which receives the energy from around the sun. Now, the research for this is pretty in-depth. You can see my research tree. And if we look over here, you could see the solar sail orbit system, which unlocks solar sails and unlocks the EM rail ejector. And then also next over, you can see the ray receiver, which allows you to gather that energy. Here's the problem with this particular research tree. While these two items on the main quest line of the Dyson Sphere are pretty easy to unlock, you really need to unlock a lot of sub-items to be able to even produce the EM rail ejector and the EM rail receiver, as well as any solar sails that you might want to produce. Graphite, you're going to need an entire production line for graphite, and also for the photon combiner. And you can see some of these things that it takes as I'm hovering over it. You know, it takes a prism, it takes a circuit. If we look at the EM rail ejector, the EM rail ejector takes processors, and which are right here. And it also takes the super magnetic field generator, which you can also see, I mean, it's got a lot of sub requirements associated to every single one of these. So your research tree is gonna look something like this. If you're here at the ray receiver, chances are you've already unlocked all of this other stuff to be able to produce the items that are needed to create the Dyson Sphere. On top of that, you're going to have to create graphite production lines. You're also going to have to be getting some sort of titanium from somewhere on a regular basis, which might even mean that you have the interstellar logistics station set up to transfer titanium from one location to another. And not to mention just an absolute crap ton of blue, red, and yellow matrices. And the production lines that support them, right? Because you're going to need even the production lines to support making these things, even before you can even unlock the research to get the Dyson Swarm. The EM rail ejectors will be inactive when the sun is not within view. And it also needs to be within a certain pitch to be able to shoot the solar sail at the sun. If you want to effectively use the EM rail ejector, it would be smart to have at least two stations, one on each side of the planet, shooting off solar sails to the sun to populate the Dyson Swarm. Since I'm kind of restricted right now, I'm only really producing solar sails in one area, and the process is not completely automated. I have all my EM rail ejectors on one side of the planet. And it seems to be doing okay. I've got 534 solar sails in my current network. And of course, I'm going to be getting more in there as well. So let's go ahead and set up a new orbit. Before we set up an orbit, let me talk to you just a moment about solar sails. Solar sails have a life. They don't last infinitely. So they have a lifespan of 2,400 seconds. which is 40 minutes. Now, I believe that this is not the initial value. There is some research underneath the upgrades that you can spend some time researching, which are solar sail life, which will increase the life of the solar sail. First one is 150 seconds, and then another additional 150 seconds, and level 3 is an additional 300 seconds. So the value that I'm showing you might not be 100% accurate. This goes on, so you can continue to increase the life of the solar sail and probably have it last double the time. When the EM rail injectors are aligned, they will shoot off solar sails into the Dyson Sphere. And let's go ahead and set another one up really fast. I happen to have one that has been already created. It does need some space to be able to put it down, so make sure you have plenty of room. I'm going to build that, and then I'm also just going to build from my storage over to here. Build a little conveyor line, and then I want to populate and fill up my rail. And then I want to go ahead and create a new orbit. So you just hit add orbit, and it kind of automatically detects an orbit and which you want, or at least defines an orbit which looks good. You can change the radius, you can change the inclination, you can change the longitude and latitude of it. You can see we have this kind of scenario going on here. We can change the angle. So you can be pretty creative with your Dyson Swarm and how you want to set it up. Once you create your orbit, then you turn around and you just add it, and now you have a third orbit. And when you go back to the EM rail ejector, you select the orbit in which you want to shoot into. Once the EM rail ejector has a clear shot at the sun, it'll start shooting off solar sails. As you can see, my third one is now shooting off. And actually, if you go to a planetary view, you can see these blue lines going out. They're shooting off into the appropriate orbit. And you can also look at that from the Dyson Sphere interface. You can see that these blue objects are going in. I did have to change this orbit a little bit. It wasn't the right inclination to be able to shoot in there, so I just changed it just slightly. And you can see that we're starting to add to the Dyson Sphere on this particular orbit and all other orbits. Finally, the last piece of the puzzle is the ray receiver. And all you have to do is place the ray receiver down. You can see that it's got 100% strength. You can see what the power load is. You can see that I'm continuously receiving 35% of the power. My max output right now is 7.7 megawatts. And I've got a 51% receiving efficiency. These you should probably have all over the planet as well, so that you can be receiving energy efficiently from your Dyson Swarm. And this power goes directly into your network, so it just gets added to your mass quantity of power that you have available. All right, well, that was it for this episode. I hope you guys learned something about the Dyson Swarm and how to build one. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. I'd love to have you in the community. If you want to follow me on any of my social media, you can find the links in the description below, and make sure to hit that notification bell. That way you know when I go live and when I post new videos. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.